The Zothar Dominion had not known fear in over 1,000 years. From the luminous nebulae of Elton Prime to the glacial moons of Marnak, every world they touched either bent the knee or turned to ash. Their language lacked a proper word for resistance, only delay. It was with this pride that Supreme Admiral Vark stood aboard the bridge of the dreadnought Nilesroth, staring down at the blue-green orb rotating lazily below. Earth! Small, seemingly primitive, uncatalogued and unprotected. He turned to his command unit. Spined and plated creatures bred for pure tactical efficiency. Deploy first-wave bombardment. Soften the crust. Standard cleansing protocol. Orbit lit with golden light as kinetic rods and antimatter spheres rained silently downward, tearing apart cloud banks and streaking through the atmosphere. Within seconds, entire swaths of Earth's surface disappeared under the glow of annihilation. Cities crumbled into firestorms. Mountains folded like paper. The Admiral crossed his arms. It was efficient, clean, just as it always was. And yet, something irked him. There were no outgoing distress calls, no retaliatory fire, no panic broadcasts. Just stillness. Vark dismissed the thought as irrelevant. On the planet's surface, what remained of the atmospheric haze cleared to reveal the skeletal remains of towers, monuments, and arcologies. But even through the carnage, there was an odd symmetry. The roads had not twisted chaotically in the destruction. They'd vanished in neat, melted lines. The craters bore strange, fractal patterns. One of the lesser officers noted it, but the Admiral silenced him. Pattern or not, they are ash now. Hours later, the second wave descended. Commandant Yishar led the invasion force, a hybrid breed of genetic tactician and elite ground strike enforcer. Thousands of drop pods speared into the planet's surface. A pale wind met them as they emerged, distorted by atmospheric reconstruction. Earth's sky had a greenish tinge, though their scanners reported it as breathable. Artificial. Everything was too clean. No signs of civilian survivors. No power grids. No corpses. They marched through silent cities that still sparkled with untouched windows. The buildings were unmarred, not a single scorched wall or shattered glass pane. The oddest thing was the sound. No birds, no insects, just wind, and sometimes an ambient hum, low and continuous. Scans. Yishar demanded. One of the drones hesitated. Thermal readings, variable. Some structures radiate intense heat signatures, but others are colder than vacuum. And there's no biological activity. Not even microorganisms. Another drone piped in. Possibility. Planet already sterilized by unknown weapon. No, Yishar said, staring into distance. This isn't sterilization. This is waiting. Elsewhere, beneath the crust, something stirred. Aboard the Nilesroth, the Admiral received a report. Sir, long-range signals have encountered interference. We've lost data uplink with the southern incursion units. He frowned. Sabotage. No evidence. The units simply stopped transmitting. Then came the first counterstrike. From Earth's upper orbit, a sudden gravitational distortion bloomed. What was thought to be a disused communications satellite reoriented and split open, revealing a crystal core. It pulsed once, then discharged a beam that lanced through a Zothar cruiser. There was no explosion. The ship simply folded, crumpled, and vanished, its atoms atomized with surgical elegance. Admiral Vark rose to his feet. Alert all ships. Defensive posture. But by then, 100 more satellites, previously dormant, activated in synchronized silence. The sky turned bright. Zothar vessels scattered, some firing wildly, others careening toward the atmosphere in panic. Shields failed. Engines imploded. Whatever these satellites were, they weren't weapons in the conventional sense. They were precise, intentional. On the ground, Commandant Yishar felt the shift even before the transmission arrived. The air grew heavier. Lights flickered in patterns not aligned with any technology the Zothar recognized. From within the roads, the walls, and the sky came a voice, not heard but felt. Observed, measured, judged. Yishar's instinct screamed to retreat. He barked orders, but the air vibrated again, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open, not from tectonics, but deliberate architectural design. Metal tendrils as thick as limbs slithered out from beneath the streets, impaling vehicles, dragging them into the earth. The walls of buildings opened like petals, revealing weapon systems camouflaged beneath living architecture. Drones, born not of metal but of glass, light, and bone, poured into the streets, moving in perfect silence. It wasn't war. It was correction. The Zodar were not invaders now, but contaminants. And Earth, the planet they had thought fragile, was responding like an immune system. From his vantage point in orbit, Vark watched in disbelief as the planet reshaped itself, entire continents shifting subtly in geometric synchronicity. Oceans changed color. Storm systems moved with unnatural purpose. This was no coincidence. This was orchestration. "Begin planetary retreat protocols," he growled. "We underestimated the target." But it was already too late. The system's hyperspace exits blinked offline. Someone, or something, had closed the door, and Earth was no longer just a target. It was a trap, to be continued. The silence in the ruined city was no longer just unsettling, it was surgical. Commandant Yishar moved through the gleaming corridors of what he assumed had once been a transportation hub. The walls pulsed faintly, not with electrical current, but with something subtler. Alive. His boots left no print on the surface beneath, a smooth material that neither glass nor metal could describe. His helmet scanner offered no useful data. Everything was too perfect, too adaptive. It changed when you looked away. Behind him, the remains of his squad scanned every surface, but the instruments fed back only anomalies, spikes of radiation that shouldn't exist, drops in gravity, waves of sound that carried no source. His top scout, Kron, approached with an unusually hesitant stride. "The structures, sir, they are not ruins. They are dormant." Yishar narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Kron hesitated, then tapped at the air, projecting a map of their route. Where they had walked, the ground remained unchanged. But behind them, the path they'd taken was gone, sealed. The architecture had folded in on itself, erasing their trace. "It's rebuilding as we pass." Yishar turned back toward the main concourse. Just beyond a sweeping arch, the street curved upward into a spiraling tower of translucent material. And on it, growing like ivy, were symbols. New ones. They hadn't been there minutes ago. One of the troops pointed. "It's writing, and it's learning our language." Before Yishar could respond, the ground gave a low, sustained hum. All motion ceased. Even the wind stilled. Then came the voice again, not through ears, but through bone. "You are not welcome. Return to your sky." His comms crackled, connecting briefly with the Nile's wrath. But all he heard was screaming. Not battle, madness. The orbital fleet had descended too far. High above, the Zordar ship spun wildly, some now colliding, others veering off course as navigational systems fell into chaos. Admiral Vark watched as one of their flagships shuddered and split open like an overripe fruit. The cause wasn't visible. No external force. It was as if the ship had turned against itself. Internal power rerouted. Shields collapsing inward. "Sabotage!" one of the officers shouted. "No," Vark muttered. "This is manipulation." He realized it now. Earth systems were not reacting. They were orchestrating, predicting. The AI intelligence they dismissed as passive was something else entirely, something that had studied them the moment they entered the system. Below, Yishar gave the order to retreat to the extraction point, but his squad's path had vanished. Buildings had shifted subtly, corridors turned upon themselves. They ran, weapons drawn, only to find themselves in the same plaza they'd left minutes earlier. One soldier fired a plasma round at a nearby structure. The bolt disappeared midair, absorbed. A moment later, the wall opened like a breathing lung and exhaled a cloud of shimmering particles. Screams followed. The soldier dissolved in place, his armor peeling off in flakes of dust, flesh turning translucent, then vanishing altogether. Kron staggered back, eyes wide. "It's not killing us, it's dismantling us." Yishar grabbed his shoulder. "We need high ground visual. Anything not linked to local geometry." They bolted toward an adjacent tower, a spire that hadn't moved yet. The doors slid open before they could touch them. Inside, the elevator chamber had no buttons. Just a smooth obsidian surface and a moment of stillness. Then they rose. The ride was silent. Outside, the city shifted like an organism adapting to infection. Reaching the top, Yisha stepped into an open chamber overlooking the expanse. From above, the truth became clear. The city wasn't built, it was grown. Roads, towers, even the air duct were too perfect, too mathematically exact to be constructed by hands. And at the city's heart, a central obelisk, black as space, pulsing with slow, deliberate rhythm. A heartbeat. A console lit before him, hovering, waiting. A string of alien symbols formed, then morphed into Zothar glyphs. You do not belong. He reached for his rifle, but before he could fire, a light flickered at the console's edge, and a holographic map displayed the positions of every Zothar unit on the planet. Each location blinked once, then disappeared. Yisha gasped. No, that's not a projection. They were being erased, one by one. The chamber darkened as the tower itself began to close in, the walls folding like petals, the floor liquefying beneath them. Kron, now! But Kron didn't move. He stood transfixed by the image hovering in front of him. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a question. Do you understand yet? He looked at Yisha. They don't want to fight. They want to teach. Teach what? Yisha spat. To not return. The tower vanished into mist. In orbit, Vok gave the order he never thought he'd speak. Retreat! But Earth was not finished. The outer layer of the atmosphere, now revealed as an engineered field, pulsed inwards. Escape vectors twisted. Wormhole drive fizzled before ignition. And then came the final transmission. You will tell others. As the Niles roll spun away from the collapsing horizon, its hull glowing from the radiation of Earth's refusal, Vok stared at the dying stars around the planet. He finally understood. This wasn't a victory denied. It was a warning delivered. And the galaxy would never be the same. To be continued, the Zothar Dominion had never known debriefings shrouded in silence. Yet silence filled the command citadel on Terra Prime as Admiral Vok stood alone before the High Directive, a tribunal of crystalline minds and ancient tacticians that had ruled from shadows since the Dominion's inception. The Admiral's armor bore scars it had never known before, ones not earned in battle, but in understanding. You were repelled. The center node spoke, voice like shattering ice. Explain. Vok didn't flinch. We were not repelled. We were spared. The tribunal stirred, a faint ripple of unease. Sparing was not in the lexicon of their enemies, let alone prey. He continued, Earth is not what we believed. It is not a primitive world, nor a sleeping one. It is something else, a sentience embedded in planetary architecture, an ecosystem designed with surgical intent. We were not invaded by their military. We were catalogued, interpreted, judged. Another voice buzzed, impatient. Judged by what? A machine. No, machines obey logic. Earth's response was emotional. Strategic, yes, but also performative. It wanted us to understand it before it chose not to destroy us. Laughter echoed from one of the younger strategists. So, the deadliest planet in this sector decided to deliver a philosophical lecture. Vok turned sharply. It did not need to destroy us. That is the point. We were never a threat. We were an irritation. And Earth wanted us to carry its message. The tribunal fell into a contemplative stillness. For a species that had turned entire galaxies into fractured embers, this idea was foreign. The predator had met something not stronger, but older, wiser, possibly infinite. Fire crossed the stars. In the outer systems of the Dominion, whispers began to spread. Zothar vessels that had encountered derelict Earth satellites, relics now believed dormant, had begun reporting the same anomalies. Systems overridden, memory banks rewritten with cryptic code, and navigational software locked to loop the same phrase in hundreds of languages. You were seen. Each time, no lives were taken, no ships destroyed, just a lingering presence of observation. On one border outpost, a scout vessel failed to return. Instead, the base received a data dump of the crew's memories, edited, reordered, and annotated with Earth's alien syntax. The annotations weren't mockery. They were commentary, insights, dissections of pride, statements like, hubris is the armor of the short-lived. Violence reveals intention more than strength. You seek conquest, we seek meaning. Back on Terra Prime, the tribunal struggled with its next move. They couldn't simply erase the memory of what happened. Their dominion was built on myth, on superiority. But now, Earth lingered like a shadow over every strategy session. Every world they approached wondered silently, are we next to be studied? Yet not all within the Dominion feared the revelation. Among them, sub-strategist Alrek, a defector from the militant caste, saw opportunity. He approached Vark with an unorthodox proposal. Send an envoy, Alrek said, not as diplomats, as learners. Vark's silence stretched, until finally, they will see that as arrogance. Earth doesn't want questions. It already has the answers. Alrek smiled faintly. Then let us go with silence. Let us offer only listening. The Admiral's expression darkened. You do not understand what we faced. I don't need to, Alrek replied. Only that we are not the apex we believed. And that is a gift if we can survive our pride. Meanwhile, on Earth, the surface began to reconfigure. What had once been the sites of devastation now bloomed with unfamiliar flora, geometrically perfect and biologically impossible. The cities, long emptied of life, pulsed with soft energy patterns. Deep within the crust, far below the old cities, vast vaults stirred, timeless and humming with quiet thought. Earth itself was not merely recovering. It was evolving. And in a vault mile beneath the Arctic shelf, something awoke. A form, not human, not machine. A being formed of fractal light and resonant sound, pulsing with intelligence that spanned epochs. It did not speak. It echoed, carrying memory forward like a torch in darkness. It had no name, for it had never needed one. But the Zodar had given it something new, perspective. The echoes it carried were ancient. Wars fought long before stars were born, decisions made when the universe was still soft. It remembered when Earth had been seeded with thought, when it had been left to slumber, until needed again. Now, it was needed. Elsewhere, Vark found himself staring at the stars beyond his private viewport. For the first time in his life, he questioned whether dominance was ever truly power, whether survival lay in silence, in restraint, in observation. And as the stars twinkled against the cold void, he whispered the phrase that had haunted him since his retreat. You will tell others. He would, but he would also wonder, until his final breath, how many species had encountered Earth and never returned to speak. To be continued. The envoy ship Quiet Meridian glided toward Earth without banners or escort, its surface stripped of insignias, its weapons decommissioned. Inside, sub-strategist Alrek sat in quiet meditation, watching the pale swirl of the approaching planet. The Zordar Dominion had not sent him to negotiate, nor to reclaim dignity. They had sent him because they no longer knew what else to do. This was no mission of conquest. It was contrition, dressed in the shell of curiosity. Alrek was alone. No crew, no command unit. Even the ship's systems were designed to run autonomously, to keep him from disrupting the sanctity of his intent. He was a passenger, not a pilot, a messenger without a message. As he crossed into the upper thermosphere, Earth responded without ceremony. The clouds parted, not by wind, but with purpose. A corridor of clear sky opened, lined with a soft glow that pulsed in time with his own ship's heartbeat. Gravity adjusted itself around the vessel's hull, and its trajectory bent, not forcefully, but with a kind of careful guidance. The ship descended into what had once been known as the Himalayas, though nothing of the old mountain range remained. In its place stood crystalline ridges and towering, prismatic spires that hummed in resonance with the orbiting satellites above. The landscape was no longer natural. It had become interpretive, sculpted by a consciousness not bound by biology. As Quiet Meridian touched down on a platform that hadn't existed minutes before, Alrek stepped into a silence that was not absence, but listening. He waited. There was no welcoming party, no holographic emissary, no digital voice. Just the stillness of an intelligence too vast for immediacy. And then it happened, not as speech, but as immersion. Reality folded, not violently, but like silk. The air shimmered, and Alrek found himself standing not in the open, but in a chamber that had not previously existed. It was both room and thought, a space made of memory and potential. Before him stood a figure, not a being, but a form, a representation. Its body was neither solid nor light, but suggestion, a mirror made of questions. "You have returned," it said, not aloud, but within him. "I was not here before," Alrek replied, steady despite the weight of presence. "But you remember." Alrek took a breath, unsure if he needed to. "We were wrong. About what you are. About what Earth is." The form moved closer, though the distance never changed. "You were not wrong. You were unfinished." He nodded slowly. "I came to learn." "No, you came to change." For a long moment, Alrek was silent. Then, "We are a species forged in conquest. Dominance defines us. We never asked if something should be taken, only if it could." The figure's voice darkened, not in tone but in texture. "Dominance is not strength. It is compensation." He met its gaze, if it could be called that. "Then what is strength?" "Restraint," it answered. "The ability to know destruction and choose creation." Alrek's thoughts reeled. The Dominion would never understand this. "Not yet, but maybe someday." "You let us live," he said. "Why?" The space shimmered, and for a heartbeat he was back in orbit, watching the destruction Earth had almost unleashed. Then the scene shifted again, to stars, hundreds, thousands, each blinking softly, each marked with symbols. "You were not the first," the figure said. "You will not be the last." His throat tightened. "And those who came before." Some returned change. Some did not return at all. But all were seen. Alrek lowered his gaze. "Then what now?" The figure extended a hand, not as invitation, but as offering. In it swirled a single light, tiny and flickering. "A choice. Take this understanding back. I'll leave it behind." He hesitated. "Will they listen?" The figure didn't respond. It didn't have to. That was never its burden. Alrek stepped forward and took the light. It entered him not like information, but like memory, flooding every part of him with knowledge and feeling. Histories not recorded, emotions not his own, futures both possible and abandoned. It overwhelmed, then crystallized. When he opened his eyes, he was back aboard Quiet Meridian, the vessel now rising gently through the atmosphere. No propulsion, no command. Earth was releasing him. As the planet dwindled behind him, he could still feel it. Not as a presence, but a pressure, like the lingering awareness of being watched by something that had already decided your worth. And as the stars opened before him, a phrase lingered in his mind, not in Zodar tongue, but in something older, more universal. The deadliest species in the galaxy found Earth, and instantly regretted it. But regret was not the end. It was the threshold. And